All right, back now here at the KFYR Plus news desk, and many top legal experts believe a full-blown constitutional showdown between President Trump and the courts is here. Senior members of the Trump administration have been talking for months about simply ignoring court orders that they don't like. Now the talk is being tested. Joining me right now is Jeremy Rosenthal, a former prosecutor and currently a defense attorney. Welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thanks, Jay. How are you?
Good, thank you. So let's talk. How would you define a constitutional crisis, and do you believe the current situation is qualifying as one?
I don't think we've quite got one yet, but there's several ways that you could do it. That's when you have an irreconcilable problem between two branches of government with no real solution. You would definitely have one if you had the executive branch ignoring an order by the Supreme Court of the United States. That would definitely put you in uncharted territories. And the reason for that would be that the judiciary doesn't have an army. The judiciary doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. The rule of law in this country says that we obey judges' orders, whether we like them or whether we don't like them. But if you violate a Supreme Court order, there's very little that the Supreme Court can do about that. They can hold you in contempt. They can take some legal action. They can try to direct you to be arrested. But when you're in when you're the executive, you have a few insulating factors to somebody coming in and getting you. Right now, currently, the situation with the immigration case to the El Salvador deportations. Right now, what you've got is you've got a federal judge, a district judge. That means an entry-level trial court judge. He is the chief judge of the Washington, D.C. district, so he does have some chops here. This is what's called an Article III judge, meaning that he was appointed by the President of the United States. That would be Barack Obama, meaning that he was approved by the Senate. It's worth noting he was approved unanimously by the Senate back in, I think, 2011. And he issued an order to the administration not to deport people pursuant to an executive order. And he doesn't believe that the administration really complied with that. And we're sort of sorting that part out right now.
Jeremy, Judge Boasberg, he has asked the Trump lawyers, I think this was yesterday, if they would like to purge the case. Why wouldn't they do it? And why wouldn't they bring these prisoners back and then just rearrest them?
We don't know. We don't know why they would do that or not do that. Maybe they would think it's unnecessary. Maybe they would think it's beneath them. I don't know that the judge ordered that to be done. It would be interesting to see if the judge did order these people to be brought back and if the administration did it at that point. The judge it sounded like a very fluid situation originally. And keep in mind, courts aren't normally designed to deal with emergency type situations. The courts aren't designed to, for instance, recall nuclear missiles or stop an ongoing attack in Yemen, as the United States did several weeks ago. But when you do have a situation like this where courts can act and can perform their judicial oversight, it's very fluid. You got to think about how these things go, right? In this instance, to kind of reset things and to maybe set the table here, the Trump administration is using what is called the Alien Enemies Act from 1798. It's an act that allows rapid deportation in times of war. And this is something that Donald Trump talked about when he was on the campaign trail. It's something that he talked about during his inauguration. His opponents, the ACLU, knew this was coming. They were ready for these types of deportations. And Trump signed an executive order behind the scenes invoking this act and then setting off these deportations. The parties got wind of it. Legal actions were filed. Judge Boasberg gets the case already after several planes had left. He directed, according to him, the Department of Justice to halt these things, and that he's going to consider issuing a broader order at 5 o'clock the same day. Judge Boasberg's questions yesterday pretty much indicated, look, administration, when you knew that I was going to potentially halt all of this at 5 p.m., you sped up the planes and you did it quicker. And is that disobeying my order? I don't know that the judge is quite there yet, but that's sort of where this particular fight is headed.
Okay. Due process. Are illegal aliens, or I should say illegal immigrants, are they afforded due process?
Yes, everybody in America is, and even under the Alien Enemies Act, you are. We don't deport people in this. We deport hopefully dangerous criminals in this country. Once we prove that they're dangerous criminals, we don't deport people because they have a tattoo that we think looks dangerous. We have to prove these things, and everybody in this country gets due process of law. We have to remember that the U.S. Constitution is very deliberate in its words. In some instances, the Constitution uses the word citizen with your right to vote, for instance. And in other instances, it talks about persons. And that would be, for instance, your First Amendment right to free speech. And the courts have been very clear over the centuries that that means that that a person is entitled to every right or to the rights in the Constitution that are for persons, and that only citizens are entitled to certain rights. Every person in this country under the Fifth and 14th Amendment are entitled to due process of law. That includes people who may not be here legally, criminals, people who are even subject to the Alien Enemies Act. There was a bit of an exchange, if you remember, about a week or 10 days ago at the appellate court where one of the appellate justices was questioning the Justice Department and say, look, even Nazis that we were deporting in World War II, even they got hearings. And you're telling me de Aragua, you're telling me they're more dangerous than the Nazis, so much so that they don't get hearings, although the Nazis do. So everybody gets due process here.
How might this case set a precedent for future judicial orders involving executive orders?
We'll have to see how this plays out. You have to think, and this is definitely going to go higher. It's going to be something that is appealed up and up. But where we are right now, what would be really fascinating here, from a legal standpoint, is if Judge Boasberg starts taking some type of punitive measures against the Justice Department. How would that look? If he holds a lawyer in contempt, well, that's a criminal action and the executive could pardon the lawyer, right? But there's all sorts of things that are at the judge's disposal. He could judicially sanction them. He could civilly sanction them. He could threaten their license. He can say, "Listen, you're being dishonest with the court. You have done one, two, three, four. You are barred from my courtroom from practicing in here again." And maybe that would be something that Donald Trump could not undo in those instances, and probably give those lawyers a reason to go back to their superiors and say, hey, we're not doing this. I like you guys. I believe in what we're doing. I also like having a law license here. Um, and the judges has suggested you guys aren't really being straight with me about your answers here. I wanted flight logs. I wanted information. I wanted to know who was on that plane. I wanted timelines. I want to know if once you guys knew I was going to potentially halt this whole thing at 5 p.m., if you guys scrambled the jets. I want to know these things. And he didn't feel like he got very clear answers to those. That could set probably a very negative precedent, I would think. And to your original question about when are we really in a constitutional crisis, when you have two branches of government that are checkmating one another, kind of like that, I think you can make a pretty good argument, Jay, that that is sort of the crisis that you're sort of talking about. Well, I'm going to put you in jail. Well, I'm going to pardon you. Well, now are we going to put the president of the United States in contempt? Under Trump versus under the Trump opinion from last year, under the immunity one, well, we know that by the president issuing a pardon to somebody, that he's absolutely immune for that. It gets very, very hairy. But again, I anticipate that what this is going to do is probably go up from Judge Boasberg up maybe all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Then we'll see what they do and how the administration sort of responds to that.
How do the actions of this Trump administration challenging the systems of the checks and balance established by how does it established by the four founding fathers? I mean, are we still are we still abiding by that?
So far, right, the administration has made it clear that they are playing ball, that they are listening to the courts, that they're abiding by the court's orders. You could look, and I the court could characterize this as paper cut infractions of the court's orders, if there is such a thing. Um, but you've also got to remember too that under the Trump immunity opinion did many things, and in some ways it really redefined the role of the executive in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And it really empowered the executive really beyond anything we'd seen. And Donald Trump is in many ways kind of taking that for a test drive, if you will. Um, but again, it's all fun and games until or unless the executive starts telling the Supreme Court, yeah, no, we're just not going to do that. Then you would think at that point the tiebreakers is the legislature, right? Because the legislature can impeach, and that goes for the judge, and that goes for the executive. They can impeach either, and you would think, in theory, that if and we're talking hypothetically, of course, if the executive branch just flat out ignored a U.S. Supreme Court order, in that instance, you've got a very strong case that we're violating the Constitution, violating our oath of office at that point, and then you would think that the checks and balances could work its way around that way. Uh, we're not there yet. It's interesting things to sort of kick around and talk about. But at the moment, I think you've got, at best, some paper cut infractions, still infractions, but at the moment, I don't know that it's risen to the level of a crisis.
Right. So, Jeremy, my next question was going to be we've got the two of the three legs, judicial and executive. Where is the legislation on this so far into it? They probably won't be chiming in yet. Even if they do, we've already seen the song and dance twice, right? The impeachment of Trump. The third time, people are going to be, oh God, here we go again, right? So, the role that they're going to play in this situation, do you think they'll play any at all?
I don't know that they will, at least not yet. You have to. Richard Nixon resigned once his base left him. Once
Mm-hmm.
the Senate came to him and said, "We can, Mr. President, we're not here for you anymore. We can't support you anymore." That's when the ball game is essentially over for the executive branch, when they have no support in Congress, zero support, or less than a third of your of the Senate is with you. Um, Whatever infractions that happen, if they did, would have to result in people picking up the phone and calling their senator and saying, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Enough of this. It would have to trigger something that fundamentally altered his support within the legislature, and really support amongst the people. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's, if you will, some of the genius of the framers of the Constitution was that if the people are with you, then you're fine. The people get the government that they want to get, and if that is an executive with a lot more power than we're used to having, if that's what the people want, then that's what we're going to get.
Jeremy, what do you see of this administration going after the former law firms that were on the side of, I think you know the story that I'm trying to get out. What is your
Mhm.
take on that as a lawyer?
It's hard, as a lawyer, you're fighting for your clients, you're advocating, and you never like being the target yourself, and it can be very chilling once law enforcement turns its guns to you.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't been done here, but it's been clear that at least their business has been harmed, or will be sort of taken away. Um, is that retaliation? Is that not retaliation? Not for me to say. But anytime they're targeting the lawyers, it does have a chilling effect. It really does.
Do you foresee any more legal battles between the Trump administration and the judiciary in the near future? Kind of a loaded question.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think we're going to have 3 or 4 years of it. And to sort of break it down for people this way, because talking to folks and reading the news, I mean, we all sort of, it's all in how the questions are framed and how the issues are sort of framed. And I know a lot of progressives see Donald Trump as sort of this authoritarian, and I know a lot of conservatives or Trump supporters see the courts as sort of being rogue. What we have to remember here is that Donald Trump has a razor thin majority in the House and not much better in the Senate.
Hmm.
The administration and the Republicans had to go get votes across the aisle just to keep the government running. That's just another way of saying we're not going to see really any legislation here that's going to be meaningful as far as immigration goes, as far as a lot of these big changes that Donald Trump wants to make. So what we're seeing are a lot of executive orders. We've seen more executive orders in the first 60 days of this administration than any other administration so far. And those just tend to draw a lot of legal challenges. They just do.
Hmm.
Some of them have been, we're going to rename it the Gulf of America. No, okay, whatever. But others of them, birthright citizenship, the deportations, a lot of these other executive orders are just going to draw more legal challenges, particularly because they're very aggressive in nature. They attack people's funding. They attack people's livelihoods. So to put it in basketball terms, you drive to the hoop, you're going to get a lot of foul calls, and that's why
Sure.
we're seeing as many. That's why we're seeing the degree and the volume of what we're seeing, and there's no reason to think that that won't continue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's obviously I don't know what the 2025 plan was. The plan that they had written up there. I did not see it, but I can imagine this is what they had in mind. Put as much out there. Hey, look over here. We've got this going on while we're doing something over here, right? I mean, it's possible. A couple more things here, Jeremy. We'll let you go.
Yeah.
How could this showdown affect the overall functioning of the U.S. legal system?
It's critical to it. The rule of law says we do what judges tell us. And I am not allowed to tell my client in a criminal case, don't show up to court, this judge is a nut. I'm not allowed to tell if for a family lawyer, a divorce lawyer is not allowed to tell their client, you know what, the judge says you got to give the kids over this weekend to your ex, but this judge is wrong, doesn't know what they're doing. So just keep the kids anyway. We don't get to do things like that. Anything that erodes our belief in our faith in the legal system, it really hurts us at a base level. That's the fundamental rule of law. And we've got three branches of government, not one branch of government. If you have one branch of government that's just kind of operating well because you can't stop us, then you really are sort of eroding some of the foundations which make us American. And again, just to kind of back up and caution just a little bit, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Hmm.
I mean, what we see and what we hear, we hear a lot of language about a showdown. We hear a lot of rhetoric about, well, we're thinking of defying some orders about running some stop signs here. We haven't quite seen that yet, and maybe that happened with Judge Boasberg. Maybe it didn't. Um, Anytime there's no such thing as a small infraction of a federal judge's orders, right? Even though, characterizing them as a paper cut, it's sort of almost daring the court to do something about it and then trying to politicize that outcome. Um, we'll have to see where this all goes, but absolutely these types of things can erode our faith in the judiciary, which is a cornerstone of our democracy.
Okay. Jeremy, before we go, I'm not quite sure if you heard about the verdict that we had here last week concerning the Nicole Rice murder case that took place. Did you get a chance to see the reaction video?
I did not.
Okay. I guess then the question probably won't help. It was pretty hot topic here across the state as the verdict was read. The defense team and, of course, Miss Rice was very, very happy, as they, very well should be. But to many people thought it was a little over the top, a little overly exciting. I mean, in your professional opinion, what is the decorum on something like that? And bear in mind, it's a very important case, not only for the defense, but
Right.
more so for the defendant.
Something that's kind of interesting, a little bit of behind the scenes inside baseball with how a trial court works, particularly in a criminal case when a verdict is read. A lot of times there's extra law enforcement in the room. A lot of times, and the bailiff may not know, the jailers may not know, the judge may not know the verdict as the parties come in or as the jury comes in
Mm-hmm.
and hands the piece of paper to the judge. And so it can be a very, very tense moment. And usually you have a judge who tells and it's not uncommon at all for a trial judge to sort of admonish everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody here is going to keep it cool. Everybody, we have binary verdicts in these courts. One side's going to win, another side's going to lose, and everybody in here better keep it together. And I don't know if that admonishment happened or not. A lot of times that's not what we see, or is not as necessarily what's reported. But when as a lawyer, I'll tell you this much. I mean, when you get to the end zone, you got to act like you've been there before, because
Yeah.
definitely people are gonna get rubbed the wrong way, and you just take your win, go to Chili's.
Yeah, it was so well. Maybe if you have a moment, you can check it out. But it was a celebration, I guess, in the courtroom like any other that I had ever seen. Even, of course, the infamous OJ case, where there was some emotion showed, but this was a little bit over the top, and it brought some emotion from a lot of social media folks here in the state of North Dakota, and they issued an apology, rightfully so. I believe the Sand Law Firm issued their apology on that. So, Jeremy, thank you so much for the insight on this. I appreciate it. And hey, listen, let's catch up next Friday. What do you say?
I'd love that, Jane. I'll check that video out. And between now and then, and when I'm not practicing law, I'm trying to make uber amounts of money. So that's the other part of practicing law too, is that always pay your lawyer, pay them on time and in full. And yes, public
Great
service
idea.
announcement.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you, sir. We'll catch up with you next Friday. Have a great weekend.
All right, see you, Jay.